Many of you know about the microbiome of your own gut, but have you considered that it might be mirroring the health of the Earth's microbiome? And both are affecting our ability to evolve consciously? I'm Julie Ciela, your host of We Are the Soil, where we have conversations around where gut health meets spirituality. Hi, Nitsa.
Hi.
Welcome to We Are the Soil. I'm so thrilled to have you. We are launched right into our interview. So thank you for being here. I just want to introduce everybody to you. This is Nitsa Citrine, and Nitsa is a foodie, a food activist, an artist, an alchemist, and former creative director of Sun Potion, a brand that we love here at Firm Fatale and use all the time. We used pine pollen last night in a mocktail. So we're so thrilled to have you and talk to you more about your passion and what you do around regenerative agriculture. Here at We Are the Soil, we have conversations on where gut health meets spirituality. So I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted and honored to be a part of this conversation.
Amazing. So, as I mentioned, you were the creative director of Sun Potion for 7 years, and you refer to yourself as an alchemist. I want to talk a little bit about adaptogens for a moment before we move on. Can you tell the listeners what is an adaptogenic herb and why they're so important?
Yeah. So from my point of view and through, working with herbs, tonic herbs, adaptogenic plants, uh, which actually truly began with my father, who's a doctor of Oriental medicine and
Mm.
acupuncture. Um, and so I kind of was raised with the TCM, traditional Chinese medicinal perspective. Adaptogens for me are any sort of medicinal plants that can be taken consistently. They're more gentle on the system than, let's say, a medicinal herb, and they essentially work to bring the body into more of a state of balance, whether it's digestive, nervous system, immune system balance. And I personally love them because they can be taken in small doses throughout a long and healthy life. Whereas a more medicinal herb, like let's say echinacea or golden seal, is actually a little bit toxic or
Mm-hmm.
poisonous. Therefore, you only want to take it when you really need it, when your body's out of balance. It can address a certain symptom. And then once it corrects itself, you don't have to take it. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like how I describe adaptogenic plants and adaptogenic herbs.
Amazing. Are there any specific herbs, adaptogens, superfoods that you specifically love for gut health?
I love this question. Being like a total superfood nerd and being my own guinea pig for years, I recently was introduced to this whole very wildly simple healing protocol for gut health. It's my dear friend Unique Hammond and Karen Hurd kind of created this name for the Bean Protocol,
Mm.
and I actually kind of through my heavy use and self-experimentation with tonic herbs and adaptogens, realize the impact that they have on my liver, even having the clearest, the best sources of adaptogens. And so I went on a whole no supplements, no adaptogens, no superfoods, and started to only incorporate kind of beans as essentially
Wow.
my supplement. And honestly, it's been so phenomenal for my health. So right now, I'm really excited and beans, and you can, obviously, if you can, soak, sprout, and cook them.
Yes, I know it's kind of
It,
controversial what you're mentioning because I know for some some theories of thought would say that legumes can be inflammatory for someone with autoimmune disease. But
Yeah, right. Well, I think everyone has their own system, their own body, their own balance and imbalances. But what I've learned in through working with Unique is that beans, specifically for anyone, like she had really severe Crohn's disease
mm,
and was essentially not able to restabilize and re-equalize her health. She had tried everything and was kind of all correlated with hormones and then also with the liver. And so for me, when I was reading more and I had kind of a series of like health flare ups, which made me go, I wonder if my liver is inflamed. And usually I would do like a liver detox protocol. But
right.
the great thing about beans is that they're really, really, if you do cook and prepare them correctly, they're actually incredibly gentle while being detoxifying. And
Mm,
they go through, and with this system, they kind of help flush toxic bile out of the liver. And, for people who have really sensitive digestive systems, which for me, I've always had a strong digestion, but I was never like a big bean eater. Like I always felt like it would give me indigestion or maybe a little bit of bloatedness, what have you. I was like, not, yeah, beans weren't like my go-to.
hmm
When I started the protocol the first 3 or 4 days, there was a little bit of like digestive adaptation, but
hmm
now I literally can eat beans all the time and I'm fine. Like I've never had everything. Let's
Well,
just say things are running
honestly,
very smoothly.
yeah, I'm a big believer in, cooking foods the way that they were nature meant for them, designed for them to be best absorbed. Like, for instance, in my field of thought, I've had best results whenever I've sprouted my nut seeds and
Absolutely.
soaked the beans prior to cooking them. But a lot of, in when it comes to dairy, never pasteurized dairy, only raw dairy if consumed at all, because that's what nature intended, right? And we, in this
Mhm.
industrial world that we, have been subject to here, I think a lot of people, think that homogenizing and pasteurizing and, just the lack of education around certain foods, and I think that's probably a good segue into a subject that we both want to talk about, which is regenerative agriculture. But, just the lack of education, I think, is more of the issue when it comes to
Mm,
food, and people not really realizing that, nature intended for these foods to be sprouted or soaked in order for certain enzymes and amino acids to be released so the body can actually digest them. So I think that beans get a bad rap because of them not being prepared properly. Is sort of my theory of thought. But uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
And one of my favorite adaptogens, Mucuna pruriens, is a bean. So
Yes, I have it
so
here right in
there
my kitchen.
yeah, there you go. And it's amazing for speaking of like, the gut brain connection.
Mm,
It, helps establish healthy dopamine
yes.
levels in the brain, which, we associate with happiness and joy and bliss. And I really do feel like if you have a happy mind and have a happy tummy and vice versa. So
I'm so
that's a
glad that you
bean.
brought I'm so glad that you brought that bean up because I don't think it tastes very good. And I tend to not use it because the taste is a little bitter.
Yeah.
Do you recommend using uh, that? How do you pronounce it again?
Mucuna pruriens.
Mucuna
So
pruriens. Yes. How do you recommend putting it, let's say, in a mocktail or a smoothie, or like, how do you use it?
great question. Yeah, it definitely has a little bit of, especially if you have an extract of it, it has like this little kind of salty, caramely, strange flavor, which you don't really know how to place. So the way that I like to combine it is, either in like a blended tonic with a warm seed milk, and you only really need like half a teaspoon
Yeah.
of the powder if you're using the powder for 8 to 16 ounces of liquid. So that definitely love it in anything that's like more heart opening, maybe some cacao. You can throw some pine pollen, maybe a little reishi, lion's mane chaga mushroom in there. As far as like mocktails, I'm a little bit like, because it does have that earthier flavor, I feel like it's better with like creamier flavor profiles versus like fruity flavor profiles, just
Right, right.
because that can get a little bit funky. So I feel
I
like
think
anything that's a little bit like earthier,
maybe
herbal.
coconut milk kefir.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that
That's
sounds
probably, yeah. And
heavenly.
I'm so glad I asked you that, because I've had it here in my cupboard, and I have so many of the other Sun Potion superfoods, and that one particularly hasn't been getting used. So thank you for the inspiration. I really appreciate that. So
Yeah.
segueing from Sun Potion, or did you have anything to do with the sourcing of Sun Potion whenever you worked with them?
Yeah.
Any of the, yeah. So that was, I'm really curious to know what you discovered whenever you began diving into different countries, their agriculture and their processing during that sourcing process. Did you discover things about climate change and agriculture whenever you began sourcing, or where did your passion for regenerative agriculture really come in here?
Wow. Well, regenerative agriculture actually, again, I think came to me at a younger age. I feel really lucky because where I was born and partially raised at Esalen Institute in Big Sur, we had a
Mm.
really beautiful garden on property.
Mm. I've been.
And so, yeah, yeah. And so there's a lot of consciousness around food and community. And so I think that really kind of planted the seed for me at a young age. And then actually, when I was in college, I took a gap year to go back to Esalen to get my permaculture degree, or
Mm.
not degree, certification. It was a 2-month course. And I've always, my grandmother is a master gardener. My father and grandfathers were farmers. So I kind of feel like it's in my blood.
I understand.
However, yeah, permaculture kind of really from a creative design level, which full circled for me working as a creative director and designer and photographer later on, really just answered a lot of my questions and connected the dots as far as sustainable living, the
Hmm.
connection to food, community, and then larger picture, the future.
Hmm.
Specifically working with tonic herbs and adaptogens that are sourced from all over the world. I mean, absolutely, you can see, when you're working with these really resilient yet rare and precious plants, they are impacted by global warming. They are
Yes.
impacted by environmental toxicity and threats. We are all connected. So I've certainly seen that intensify over the years. And I think that's, on one hand, it's really awesome to have more companies emerging that are offering adaptogens and even just
Superfoods.
seeing the growth in the plant-based food industry on the whole. It's all mostly amazing. However, I do feel like as adaptogens, as plant-based diet becomes more and more popular in the mainstream, it's also an invitation for all of us to really, really look into where these plants are coming from,
Yes.
how they're being grown, who's growing them, and yeah, just really refine our discernment there. So,
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something that I think is becoming more and more popular. My background, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, fermenting
mm,
and gardening and preserving food, and we killed everything we ate growing up. So, I come from a pretty backwoods, background, and then
awesome.
going off to mortuary college and studying death and then getting sick with autoimmune disease, I had to go back to my roots. I had gotten away from my
Mhm.
roots, then I had to go back to it and start eating bacteria rich foods in order to regain my health. And then I actually saw the value in how I grew up whenever I got sick at 24 years old, the same year that I had an incident that helped inspire this probiotic mocktail brand, being left out whenever my friends were drinking alcohol and I couldn't have anything. And, back in those
Mm.
days in the, uh, I guess, what year was that? 2001. It wasn't cool to have a LaCroix or a non-alcohol. There were no alcoholic beverages. No one talked about a social beverage or a social tonic. It was like if you had water, you were either pregnant or an AA. So when you were
Mm.
socializing, it was a very bro type culture back then. So it's really refreshing now to see this big movement that's happening within the non-alcoholic drink space. But really, that's what inspired me going back to my roots and healing myself. And it sounds like, in a sense, you didn't have to stray too far away to
Oh,
realize how your roots.
I had my naughty moments. I had my rebellion for sure. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm so appreciating the full circle now, and yeah,
Yeah.
just the foundation that childhood set me up with.
No doubt. Esalen is one of my most favorite places on the entire planet. So super
Yeah.
cool. You had an opportunity to spend a lot of time there. In regards to sourcing and getting back to what we were talking about,
Mhm.
was there anything that you ever saw in the sourcing process where you were like, we need to stop bringing this in because it's causing a detrimental impact to, let's say, the people in that region of the world? Or did you ever see anything in your line of work where you were like, we need to give back instead of taking away from this because it's not creating the kind of impact that we really want? Or maybe you didn't see that in Sun Potion, but have you seen that in your line of passion, your vein of passion with the regenerative model and agriculture?
Yeah, I'm searching my memories here. I think that I feel really, really blessed to have worked with incredible farmers and
Mhm.
wildcrafters through my career. And so, um, never really feeling like sourcing was negatively impacting the environment. However, I will admit that the packaging process has been, and I feel will always be a challenge
Mhm.
because when you're working with FDA compliancy and, everything else, and if you want to have, for instance, like a biodegradable polymer bag, which fortunately now some awesome companies have emerged that are offering them, the shelf life is only going to be 6 months, and you have a
Exactly.
product that's a 2-year shelf life or
Mm.
what have you. I think
Yeah.
that for me, like my sleepless nights have really come around actually packaging more than sourcing ingredients, just because I've been really fortunate and selective about, yeah, just working with farmers and wildcrafters who are really at the top of the top as far
And
as practice.
sustainable. Hmm.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
yeah, I mean the packaging, I mean the pack, and it's like even if it's sometimes you have to have a single use container and it kills me. And so, yeah, I guess that's where I'm always
I
looking at and
I totally
thinking,
understand. We bottle in glass, and the glass is a custom glass bottle, and it weighs. And now the big trend is our cans, aluminum cans, and
right.
we have a wildly fermented, live, raw, organic product in glass, which weighs more for as one, but secondarily, like, it's wild. So it might explode whenever you open it,
Right.
depending on
Right.
the trillions amount of bacteria that's in the bottle. And getting educating people around that. I can't tell you how many people complain about the weight of the
Mm,
shipping, and I try to explain to them, like, please understand, this is glass, and we purposefully bottle in glass for a reason. And
right.
we don't shrink wrap our the outside of that glass for a reason. And that
Yeah.
reason is the planet, the environment. We're doing everything that we can do, but I think in this world that we live in where people just want the disposable culture, and they're
Yeah.
not thinking about the decisions that are being made with certain conscious companies. It's always refreshing to me whenever I talk to a customer that gets it,
Mhm,
and they're like,
mhm.
thank you so much for bottling in glass, because we know that you could be putting this in a can and it'd probably be a lot easier and way less for you, and etc. So I totally vibe with what you're saying. And I think it's so important to support companies that are doing things as consciously as possible that impact all of us.
Mm.
So because like you said, we're all connected. But I wanted to ask you: do you believe that the planet's soil health affects our individual guts? Do you believe that the collective soil health attributes to our individual gut?
That's that's a great question. Yeah, I would have to say I do think that it does, and I think that there is, the local effect of whatever for me right now. I'm fully immersed in this garden food forest endeavor at my
Mm,
home, and I've constantly working to build up the microorganisms in the soil, the health of the
mm,
soil. And so when I'm out working in the soil that I've been tending to, I definitely have a different feeling than if I'm over in the areas that I haven't been paying as much attention.
mm,
That's just in the little micro environment of my home. And so if I take a step back and zoom out and think, yeah, collectively, which is such an interesting question, like the collective health of the soil, how is that impacting our individual health? I
because we're
think
all connected.
yeah, to a certain degree, absolutely. And I think that, it's even if you look at something like nutrient density, right? Food that is, let's say it's GMO, or even it's just conventionally grown in soil where they're doing heavy tillage, where they're stripping the soil of all the nutrients. There's like hardly any minerals left. These poor plants are like basically on steroids to grow.
Mhm.
Um, what is the nutrient takeaway of a plant like that versus, a plant that's has biodynamic amendments and, all the juicy, yummy stuff that we love. How does that absorb into the body? And I think that, um, the disparity between those two nutrient sources is very different. However, simultaneously, like that collective connective tissue of everyone, call it like soil energetics, I don't know.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
but yeah, I mean, if you look at even just mushrooms are an incredible example with their mycelia, which go, thousands and thousands of miles. That's kind of like the communication pathways of the fungal world,
Mm.
and they're all interconnected. So, I'm sure that our soil to a certain degree is communicating and connecting all over the globe, and that goes into our bellies one way or another. So,
Yeah, I really believe that our consciousness, our ability to be conscious of the nutrient soil versus the rich soil of what we're talking about, the people that have that the mind of understanding that their choices matter, and
mm,
the farmers they're supporting or growing the food themselves and doing what you're doing,
mm,
contributing to mass biodiversity within your own garden.
right.
I believe that the more people that can get on this bandwagon of making conscious choice is so vitally important to not just gut health and soil health, but our ability collectively to evolve as one. Like, we don't evolve, right, just as one spirit, right? We evolve as a
Totally.
collection of people, or not people, but collection of spirits, right, that are moving hopefully in a certain trajectory. And when I start thinking about climate change, in the stopping or reversing climate change, I really feel like it has a lot to do with collective consciousness.
Mm. Yeah,
Otherwise,
absolutely.
how could it work? How, I mean, we are nature, right? You know that. I mean, you're experiencing that every day probably in your yard. Like, we
Mm.
are a part of this. So if we're allowing it to disintegrate, how are we going to evolve? These are things I think about because, um, the more I heal from uh, past trauma, and heal my own gut wounds and things, I know that I'm attributing to the collective in a way
Mm.
that is impactful, right? Because
Mhm.
hurt people, heal people, right?
Oh, I
So
love that perspective. That's beautiful.
it just seems like the more work we can do, not just with our hands and the dirt in our yard, but also the choices that we make and the educating that we do, hopefully in doing so we can reverse not just climate change, but the things that are creating the global warming
Mm. Mhm.
from more of a molecular place instead of,
Mhm.
that's that. I think that the more we talk about these things, um, we're just shining the light of awareness on it, so um, people care more, you know.
Yeah, and I think, it's like, for me, I'm very interested in, like, vibrational listening or vibrational, understanding. Basically, for me, when you're speaking, it's almost like I tune frequency that feels powerful and healing and transformational and through conversation, and it in the moment begins to shift my reality.
Mm.
And one thing is that I think, yeah, more change is possible, and we can have an impact. So anyways, thank you for that. As you were speaking, I was starting to feel, yeah, this like surge of positivity and hopefulness that was very very refreshing.
Oh, I definitely feel it coming from you too. So thank you for contributing to it. If there's one thing that people could take away from the conversation today that they could do to make impact on the future of food, what do you think that one thing could be? Or maybe top three things that are you're feeling inspired to share, but is there anything or any things that you want people to take away from the conversation that they could do today?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say one thing would be to get as intimate with the source of your food as you possibly humanly can.
Mm.
For some people, if that means, starting a garden, growing things from seed, great. For other people, if that means going to the farmer's market, talking to the farmers who are growing the food that you're putting into your body, great.
Yes.
If that means, you know, ordering online and doing the research to understand, where these fruits, vegetables, even if it's processed foods, where it's come from,
Yeah.
how it's being made. Just get intimate and begin that relationship because I'm always saying, we are what we eat to a certain. We're literally made of these bodies, these food suits that they're a reflection of how we're nourishing ourselves. And yeah, not to be try not to be shy or try to reconnect with those sources of nourishment and get intimate.
Mm. Yes, and the vibration that they carry, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that is wonderful. I hope people feel inspired from listening to our talk today. It's a thank you so much for joining me on We Are the Soil, and I look forward to seeing what else you're growing over there in
Ah,
your epic garden. And thank you just so much for bringing these pieces of ecology and even art into what you do, because I think that the more people can understand that all of these lines of food and fashion and ecology and art, how they all come together to make up the fabric of how
Mm,
we're evolving. So thank you so much for the beautiful work that you do in the world, and live clean, drink dirty.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'm honored and delighted to be here again.
I hope to talk to you more. And just so folks know, again, where they can find you, your Nitsa Citrine on Instagram, and you also have your own podcast, Sound Food Space, which I would love to dive deeper into listening to your podcast and hearing more about these subjects. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope to talk to you soon.
I can't wait.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.